Marcus Chen had been on the planet Etheria for exactly 3 days when he realized he was about to commit what might be the most catastrophic breach of diplomatic protocol in human history. But the alternative was watching their queen die right in front of him. The grand crystal hall stretched impossibly high above, its translucent walls refracting the light of 3 setting suns into cascades of amber and violet that danced across the assembled dignitaries from 12 star systems. And Marcus stood near the back among the minor diplomatic attaches, sweating beneath his ceremonial Earth ambassador robes, despite the perfectly regulated temperature. He wasn't supposed to be here at all, really. Just a last-minute replacement when Ambassador Rodriguez caught that Centaurian flu. Thrust into negotiations he barely understood with a species humanity had only contacted 6 months ago. The Etherians looked almost perfectly human, except for their elegantly pointed ears that swept back like wings, and the faint luminescent quality to their skin, as if they'd swallowed starlight. And their Queen Lyria, was the most striking person Marcus had ever seen. She sat at the head of the crystalline table on a throne that seemed grown rather than built, her silver hair falling in waves past her shoulders, her violet eyes sharp with intelligence as she navigated the complex political discourse with representatives who'd been playing these games for centuries. Marcus had been briefed that she was young for a ruler, only in her equivalent of mid-20s, thrust into power after her father's sudden death 2 years ago. But watching her deftly handle the Dracorian trade minister's thinly veiled threats and the Velusian ambassador's condescension, he saw nothing but composed brilliance. She wore a fitted jacket of deep blue that seemed to shift like liquid mercury, practical, fitted tactical pants rather than the flowing robes he'd expected, and somehow made functional look regal. The feast had been presented with great ceremony, each dish a masterwork of culinary art from different worlds, a gesture of unity for the signing of the Mutual Defense Accord that would change the balance of power in this entire sector. Marcus noticed the servers dressed in white uniforms that marked them as the Queen's personal staff, each carrying dishes to specific guests according to some protocol he didn't fully understand. His anthropology training, the reason he'd been chosen as Rodriguez's attached despite his junior status, made him observe everything, catalog every detail, notice patterns. That's when he saw it, so subtle he almost missed it. The server approaching Queen Lyria moved differently than the others, just a fraction more rigid, and when another server came too close, the first one shifted their body in a way that seemed protective of the dish they carried. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. He'd spent 2 years on Kepler for to be studying micro-expressions and body language across species, written his dissertation on universal stress indicators, and every instinct screamed that something was wrong. The server's luminescent skin seemed dimmer. Sweat beaded at their temples despite the cool air, and their hands, though steady, gripped the serving platter with the white-knuckled intensity of someone forcing control. Queen Lyria was engaged in conversation with the Zenthorian delegate, her attention completely absorbed by the delicate negotiation about mining rights. And Marcus realized with cold certainty that no one else had noticed. The server was 3 steps from the Queen, now, 2 steps. Marcus's mind raced through the possibilities, the variables, the catastrophic consequences if he was wrong. If he interrupted this crucial moment, accused a royal servant of treachery based on nothing but a gut feeling, he'd destroy Earth's relationship with Etheria before it even began, probably end his career, possibly start an interstellar incident. But if he was right and did nothing, he'd watch a young woman die. A queen who'd shown nothing but graciousness to the nervous human diplomat who'd stammered through his introduction, who'd actually smiled when he'd accidentally used the informal greeting instead of the proper royal address, who'd put him at ease with a quiet, "We're all just people trying to understand each other." Ambassador Chen, don't let the titles fool you. The server raised the dish, beginning to lower it before Queen Lyria. Marcus didn't let himself think anymore. He stepped forward from his position along the wall, his voice cutting clear across the crystalline hall. Don't eat that food. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Every conversation ceased mid-word. 12 species, hundreds of delegates, all turned to stare at the human who'd just commanded their host queen like a common servant. Queen Lyria's violet eyes locked onto Marcus, wide with shock, and he saw something flash across her face too quickly to identify. The Dracorian minister rose from his seat, his scales rattling with indignation. The head of the royal guard, a massive Aetherian named Torvin, had his hand on his weapon, his pointed ears flat against his head in clear aggression. Marcus stood there, suddenly aware he'd just committed himself to a course with no retreat, his heart hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. "Explain yourself immediately, human." Torvin's voice was ice and thunder. "Or you will be removed from this hall in chains." Marcus forced his gaze from the guard back to Queen Lyria, addressing her directly, despite every protocol, screaming he should go through proper channels. "Your Majesty, please, look at the server. Look at their hands." To her credit, Queen Lyria didn't dismiss him outright, didn't signal the guards to drag him away, and that brief moment of consideration probably saved her life. She turned her attention to the server standing frozen beside her, the dish still hovering above the table, and Marcus saw her eyes narrow, that sharp intelligence focusing like a laser. "Javen?" she said softly, and Marcus heard something in her voice he hadn't expected: recognition, familiarity, even concern. "Are you unwell?" The server, Javen, stood absolutely still for 3 heartbeats, and Marcus watched the internal war play across their face, the luminescence of their skin flickering like a dying star. Then their expression crumpled into something between anguish and relief, and they carefully, so carefully, set the dish down on the table. "Forgive me, my queen," Javen's voice broke. "Forgive me, but they have my daughter." The hall erupted. Guards swarmed forward, delegates shouted questions, chairs scraped against crystal floors, but Queen Lyria raised one hand, and somehow, impossibly, silence returned. She hadn't taken her eyes off Javen, and Marcus saw something in her face that made his chest tight, not anger, but profound sadness. "Tell me everything," she said simply, and the gentleness in her voice was a stark contrast to the chaos of moments before. What emerged over the next hour, as the royal physician carefully analyzed the dish and confirmed the presence of thorium-laced poison that would have killed Queen Lyria within minutes, was a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Aetherian government. A faction opposed to the Mutual Defense Accord, believing it gave too much power to off-world influences, had kidnapped Javen's daughter 3 days ago, threatened to kill her unless Javen, who'd served the royal family faithfully for 20 years, delivered the poisoned meal. They'd chosen their leverage perfectly, knowing Javen's desperation, counting on the chaos that would follow the queen's death to scuttle the accord and probably start a war. Marcus found himself pulled into the emergency council that convened immediately after, despite his junior status, because, as Queen Lyria stated firmly, "Ambassador Chen saved my life and has earned the right to understand what happens next." Sitting in that smaller chamber, watching her coordinate the rescue of Javen's daughter with precision and compassion, seeing how she refused to allow Javen to be punished when they'd been a victim as much as a weapon, Marcus began to understand why the Aetherian people loved their young queen. She led not with fear or authority alone, but with genuine care for even the lowest of her subjects. When the royal guard successfully retrieved Javen's daughter and apprehended the conspirators, Marcus was standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city's bioluminescent gardens, trying to process the emotional whiplash of the evening, when he heard soft footsteps behind him. "You should have let me die," Queen Lyria said, and Marcus spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance. But when he saw her face, he realized she wasn't serious. There was actually a slight smile playing at her lips. "From a purely diplomatic standpoint, you made a terrible choice. If you'd been wrong, Earth's relationship with Aetheria would have been destroyed. Your career would be over. You gambled everything on instinct." Marcus swallowed hard, very aware they were alone, that the queen had dismissed her guards to find him. "I couldn't just watch and do nothing, Your Majesty. Even if I was wrong, even if it cost everything, I couldn't take that risk with your life." She moved to stand beside him at the balcony railing, looking out over her city, and in the soft glow of the gardens, her luminescent skin seemed to pulse gently with her heartbeat. "Why?" she asked quietly. "You don't know me. We've spoken perhaps 10 words total before tonight. I'm just another alien ruler to you, part of a political equation." "No," Marcus said, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. "You're not. When I stammered through that awful greeting yesterday and you smiled and told me we're all just people trying to understand each other, you weren't being a queen. You were being kind to someone who was nervous and out of their depth. That's not political. That's character. That's who you are." She turned to look at him fully, and her violet eyes seemed to see straight through every defense he had. "You're a very unusual human, Marcus Chen. I get that a lot," he managed, and was rewarded with a genuine laugh that sounded like wind chimes. The investigation into the conspiracy took 3 weeks, and Marcus found himself extended on Etheria far beyond his planned stay, working directly with Queen Lyria's council as Earth's representative. But more than that, spending time with Lyria herself. She sought his opinion on matters of integration and cultural exchange, seemed genuinely interested in his anthropological perspective, but their conversations wandered far beyond politics into philosophy, art, the nature of leadership and loneliness, what it meant to be responsible for millions of lives, the weight of decisions that could save or damn entire worlds. Marcus learned that beneath the regal composure was a woman who loved terrible puns, who snuck away from her handlers to walk in her gardens at dawn, who carried the weight of her father's death like a stone in her chest, who desperately wanted to do right by her people, but sometimes felt completely overwhelmed by the impossibility of the task. She learned that Marcus had joined the diplomatic corps after his mother died, hoping to build connections between worlds because he'd failed to maintain them in his own family, that he used humor as a shield, that he saw patterns in everything because finding order in chaos made him feel less lost, that he'd never expected to do anything particularly brave or important with his life until the moment he'd stepped forward in that hall. "I've been thinking about that moment," Lyria said one evening as they walked through the bioluminescent gardens, the plants around them glowing softly in response to their movement, a unique feature of Etherian flora that Marcus found endlessly fascinating. "You said you gambled everything on instinct, but it wasn't just instinct, was it? You trusted what you'd learned, your training, your ability to read people across species. You trusted yourself." Marcus considered that, watching the way the light played in her silver hair. Maybe I just couldn't live with myself if I did nothing and was right." She stopped walking, turned to face him, and the expression on her face made his breath catch. "That's the hardest part of leadership that no one tells you. Every decision is a gamble. Every choice could be wrong. But you still have to choose, still have to step forward, even when the hall falls silent and everyone is watching and you're terrified you're about to destroy everything." Her voice had gone soft, vulnerable. "After my father died, I was so afraid, Marcus. I still am, every single day. Afraid I'll make the wrong call, trust the wrong person, lead my people into disaster. That moment when you shouted, when you stepped forward despite everything you had to lose, I saw what courage actually looks like. And it wasn't fearlessness. It was being terrified and doing it anyway." Marcus found himself reaching out, and she met him halfway, their hands connecting in the space between them. And he felt the warmth of her skin, the faint electric tingle of her luminescence. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, Lyria. You lead with compassion in a universe that tells you to lead with strength. You refuse to let fear make you cruel. That's not just courage. That's extraordinary." Her eyes shimmered, and he realized with a shock that she was fighting back tears. "I'm so tired of being alone in this," she whispered. "Of making every decision in isolation, of not being able to trust anyone because everyone wants something, everyone has an agenda." "Not everyone," Marcus said quietly, squeezing her hand gently. "Some of us just want to understand each other, just want to help if we can, just want you to know that you don't have to carry everything by yourself." She stepped closer, and in the bioluminescent glow of the garden, with the stars of 3 moons overhead, and the soft rustle of alien trees around them, Marcus felt the universe narrow to just this moment, just this connection. "When the Mutual Defense Accord is signed tomorrow," Lyria said softly, "Earth will be formally bound to Etheria. Our worlds will be allies, partners in defense and trade." "Yes," Marcus agreed, though politics felt very far away right now. "But I want more than that," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want Earth to send an ambassador who understands us, who sees us as people, not opportunities. Someone who's proven they value Etherian lives enough to risk everything to protect them. I want you to stay, Marcus. Not just as a diplomat, as a friend, as someone I can trust." Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "Lyria, I'm nobody. I'm a junior attach who got lucky. There are people far more qualified, more experienced, but none of them stepped forward when it mattered," she interrupted gently. "None of them saw Javen's distress. None of them cared enough to risk catastrophic failure to save someone they barely knew. Experience can be gained, qualifications can be earned, but character? That's who you are, and it's exactly what I need. What Etheria needs, the weight of what she was offering settled over Marcus. The opportunity to be part of something genuinely important, to build a bridge between worlds, to work alongside someone who made him want to be braver than he was. You're sure? He asked, needing to hear it again. She smiled, and it transformed her whole face, made her look less like a queen and more like a young woman who'd found an unexpected connection in a lonely universe. I'm sure. The question is, are you? Because this won't be easy, Marcus. There will be more conspiracies, more threats, more moments when you have to step forward despite the fear. But we'll face them together. I promise you won't be alone in this either. Marcus thought about his life back on Earth. The empty apartment, the distant colleagues, the sense that he was always searching for something just out of reach. Then he looked at Lyria, at the hope and vulnerability and strength in her eyes, and realized he'd already made his choice the moment he'd stepped forward in that hall. Then I guess we're both gambling on instinct, he said, and her laugh was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. The signing of the Mutual Defense Accord the next day was a historic moment, broadcast across 12 star systems, cementing alliances that would shape the sector for generations. But for Marcus, the most important moment came after. When Queen Lyria formally requested Earth assign Ambassador Marcus Chen as permanent diplomatic liaison to Etheria, and the Council, perhaps understanding more than they let on, unanimously agreed. In the months that followed, Marcus proved himself not just as a diplomat, but as a genuine friend and advisor to the Queen, helping her navigate the complex integration of Earth culture with Etherian society. Using his anthropological expertise to smooth over misunderstandings before they became conflicts, always offering honest counsel, even when it wasn't what she wanted to hear. Their friendship deepened into something neither of them had quite found words for yet, something that made the court whisper and the guards smile knowingly, something that felt like the beginning of a story neither had expected to find. On the 6-month anniversary of the night that had changed everything, Marcus and Lyria stood together in the same crystal hall, now empty and quiet, and she'd insisted on bringing him there specifically. I never properly thanked you, she said softly, her hand finding his as naturally as breathing now. You gave me more than my life that night, Marcus. You reminded me that trust is still possible, that kindness exists even across the vast darkness between stars, that sometimes the right choice is the terrifying one, and that I don't have to be alone. Marcus squeezed her hand, looking into those violet eyes that had become as familiar as his own reflection. You gave me something too, a purpose, a place where I belong, someone who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't find me lacking. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they stood there in the quiet hall, two people from different worlds who'd found each other in the space between courage and fear. Outside, the 3 suns were setting again, painting the crystal walls in amber and violet, and somewhere in the palace, Javen was putting their daughter to bed, safe and whole, because a stranger had cared enough to notice. The universe was vast and strange and often frightening, full of conspiracies and conflicts and impossible choices. But it was also capable of extraordinary moments, of connections that defied logic, of courage that came from the most unexpected places. Marcus had stepped forward when the moment demanded it, gambled everything on instinct and compassion, and found not just a queen who needed saving, but a woman who saved him right back. And together they would face whatever came next, neither of them alone anymore. Both of them brave enough to choose trust in a universe that made trust difficult. Both of them proof that sometimes the right words spoken at the right moment, even when the hall falls silent and everyone is watching, can change absolutely everything.